Basketball has its sixth man, the unsung hero who comes off the bench to help his team to victory. Football has its 12th man, an unseen but powerful energy that urges the home team forward. Now, Christianity has its 13th apostle, a faithful witness to the love, mercy, and truth of Jesus Christ. How about you? Will you be the 13th apostle?
Please be advised that this show may not be appropriate for children under 13.
We're going to meet some people who would rather have the statue of Christ than the statue of Oscar. Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen, to another episode of the 13th Apostle, where we explore the good, the beautiful, and the true of the Catholic faith and the Catholic Church. This is Tom Caffrey at the mic, and at the remote mic, my dear friend, Duddy. Danny?
Tom?
How are you doing? I'm laying that up for you, boy.
I'm doing quite well. In fact, I'm doing better than quite well today because this afternoon I saw my Yankees beat the Red Sox, and I was able to watch that on television. People are shutting their microphones off.
Yeah, that's right. I'm just hearing all sorts of clicks from the northeast of us, about, a few hundred miles.
Well, my son William, who heads off to college next week, was in right field with his lovely girlfriend, Maggie. So William and Maggie witnessed it out in right field today, live and in person. So good day today.
Wow.
To see the baby, the youngest of 8 out there, drove to New York on his own.
Hey, what, it was a walk-on? He was playing right field?
Yeah, no. Let me clarify. He was on the other side of the wall. He was on the wall where the fans are.
He was in...
Well, he get arrested.
He was in the short porch then.
He was in the short porch. That's where I told him to go. He actually asked me, Dad, where should I sit? I said, do you want to be out there with those bleacher bums, man? That's where the salt of the earth is. But I said, are you bringing Maggie? And he said, yeah. And I said, okay, you don't want to be with the bleacher bums.
I was going to say.
A little bit further to the other side. I told him where to go. So
yeah, because they'll be sure to tell him and show him where to go.
Exactly.
Geez, the last Yankee. No. I remember being at a Yankee game. I thought it was Red Sox, and Ron Guidry was pitching, the smoking left-hander, Louisiana Lightning.
Oh yeah.
And he hurled a beauty. But there was so many fights, and we had decent seats. We were right off first base, and there were fights left and right. This was in the late '70s, and I think the decorum is a bit better, except for when you get out into the bleacher bums area. But
it's better. It's better everywhere.
Yeah,
it really is.
People are more polite, aren't they? They're more maybe not polite, but they're just.
Yeah, I wouldn't say polite.
Yeah, not polite. Yeah. They're more hesitant. Like so many of us are hesitant because everybody's watching us.
That's true.
But
all right, let's go to work here.
So did you catch that opening line of we're going to talk, I've referred to grabbing the crucifix as opposed to the statue of Jesus or the statue of Oscar for the Academy Awards, because we're not just going to talk about actors, but we are going to talk about people in the public eye who either reverted or converted to the Catholic faith and the Church.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So you had expressed the interest. That's 2 in a row. I mean, last week you were motivated by talking about gluttony, and this week you wanted to talk about entertainers converting, reverting. 100%. So
in our midst. I wanted to talk about that this week because it was going to bring light to me in the area where there's otherwise darkness and doubt and mistrust, in Hollywood, so that, that we could bring these lights out from there, these lighted people, so that we can say, there is something good going on in Hollywood. And I'm sure that that's true. In fact, I have a couple of examples through the research since last week and, reflection and so forth and discussions on the side. But what I did come across instead, and you and I know this well because we discussed it, a little bit during the week and then before we turned the mic on here, I came into the story of a convert that is darker than I could ever imagine. I mean, there's a huge amount of light, and commensurate, opposite to the darkness, but there was so much darkness exposed through his story. And that's the story of Bug Hall, who many of us out there may or may not have heard his story, but I'd like to talk about that a little bit. He was a childhood actor, but he came from an abusive father. He was sexually abused as a young man himself, and to the point where his father was actually put in jail. Not so much because of evidence against the father-son situation, but because it was something done outside of the home, and he was left virtually fatherless. And he wound up going into Hollywood. Didn't take long for him to realize, and he says not in his pain and his suffering, but in his confusion, to find out that Hollywood was all about the same thing. And he went immediately into being abused again. But it's an incredible story of a young man who faced a lot of abuse from ages 8 till like maybe 12, when he said suddenly kicked off like a light switch overnight. It just happened to kind of stop. But he found an immense conversion. It happened quickly, but it as he likes to say, took long to get there to the truth from someone that he had, another man that he had, had befriended for the sake of the industry. And the friend, had converted to Catholicism. And Bug Hall visited a priest, or I think you went to a conference, Tom, or you saw the same storyline. And then he wound up visiting with the priest, and the priest gave him all one-word answers. And he's like, I got this big argument going on here with this priest, and he's smoking a cigar, and he's kind of a grizzled, like old priest, and all I'm getting is one-word answers. And I had to walk away. And he said, man, this guy is just telling me nothing but the truth. The truth is just so simple, and it requires very few words. There is no arguing the truth. And he had become baptized from that point in just a couple of months. And now he has taken a vow of poverty. I don't recall exactly geographically where he said he's living, Tom, but he's got 3 daughters. But I'm telling everyone in earshot, you've got to go to that YouTube and just listen to the faith that comes from the horrors of his suffering. Once again, as Tom said, to open up the show, that holding up the crucifix. This is about the crucifix and the horrors that came from it. And, one thing that hit me really, really hard, Tom, and I know you heard this too, is what he said, the evil of this pedophilia that is rampant in Hollywood. He said, this evil is not lust. It is envy of innocence. Yeah,
that was fascinating to hear.
That is so fascinating. So the name of the YouTube is The Devil is in Hollywood. And man, the story after story after story is just so true of what's rapidly going on there. Huh?
I want to jump in, Danny, and talk about the one word that you used, pedophilia. It truly was pedophilia in his case, but it makes me think of so much that has happened in our church, and it's so often referred to pedophilia. And as the Catholic League has pointed out numerous times, based on the research that the Catholic Church did through the John Jay Institute of Criminal Justice, a premier institution, who examined this whole abuse problem and found that more than 80% of the cases it was male on male. So many people will use the word, I'm not saying you in this case because you're right, but I wanted to make the point that it's pedophilia, but in the vast majority of cases, it's man on boy. So the homosexuality part of it is very, very important because they're girl actors, and they have an innocence, and the male, these men, they could be drawn to. We could say, well, why don't they go after the young girls and their innocence? They're envious of innocence. But there's another element to it. It's the homosexuality, and that is something that's often not brought up because it's not politically correct, and I know you were not doing that, but I want to make that point. I was really amazed, and you and I were talking off the air, prior to this episode about Bug Hall, and when I was listening to his interview, when he started talking about the big changes he had made, and he was in the middle of, and every day was a new challenge, and we're talking epic challenge. No health insurance, the safety nets that we often that become so part of our lives. He has little, if any. He and his family have little, if any, of those safety nets. Where's the food going to come from? He wanted to be part of a community. He is in a parish, but I don't know whether it's, if he's homesteading, if they are homesteading, their parish might be far away. So obviously to make these changes, there was a powerful draw. Every conversion story I've heard or read is that powerful draw. And it's kind of, I so often will see the correlation between those who come into the church who are converts or reverts. They have this great enthusiasm. They're just so motivated. The Holy Spirit's working on them. And it's like, in a sense, they become, so often it seems like they become better Catholics than cradle Catholics, just like new citizens to the U.S. And my daughter and I were talking about this before we went on the air. Very heartfelt and emotional phone conversation. Her level of upset at what's happening with the Afghan girls and young women in Afghanistan after this big collapse, and what's going to happen to them, and the gratitude when she's talked with women, and very young women who come into this country, how much gratitude they have. And we see so many people, certainly in the news today, who have no gratitude. In fact, they just want to tear down this country. So there's so many corollaries, and I think I know that one actor that sticks out is Gary Sinise. It was Apollo 13 and some other great movies.
Forrest Gump.
Forrest Gump, that's right.
Yeah.
Great character in that. And his gradual movement, he started just witnessing more charity. And again, we talked about this. This is how Christianity grew in spite of the torture and the death in the early church. We're going to say the early church, put that in quotes, in early Christianity. And before Constantine said, okay, no more torture of the Christians. And yet why did it grow exponentially in the face of all that? What is it? Mm-hmm. And so many people who are Catholics today, or who are ex-Catholics, somehow maybe they never had that, or they gave it up, or they didn't appreciate, they didn't understand the value of it, because you don't give up something. They wouldn't give up $1 million. They wouldn't give up a rare historic painting or piece of jewelry or anything like that, but they give up their faith, this faith of the cross of the Catholic Church, the original, the church, the church that Christ founded. They give that up. They walk away from it. And so Gary Sinise, he saw this charity, and he saw it even more so right around 9/11, and he got to know very briefly Father Michael Judge, who was the 9/11 priest, and he ended up being martyred in the aftermath of that. But all the charity that he saw around 9/11, and he's for years he's been part of this. I don't know whether it's on July 4th, I can't remember, but anyway, he partners with other groups to put this special on, and I think in the Washington Mall. And so much of his motivation was for his newfound Catholic faith. And his wife, he said they were racing away from, there was a hurricane that was coming in, and they were racing away in their car, and the tornadoes, lightning, thunder, torrential downpour, and his wife turns to him and says, when we get home, the children and I are becoming Catholic, and we're sending them to Catholic school. And he's like, oh, blah, 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 blah. And then over time, unbeknownst to them, he started going for classes and training, and he came in. And it was what he saw in the charity of the Knights of Columbus, the first responders, many of whom were Catholic, that just, it's like the same thing that the ancient Romans did. What is it about these people? What do they have that makes them stay when everybody's fleeing?
Yeah. That's true, and I've heard that so much. And I think what Dr. Scott Hahn, one of his draws was, it's a worldwide people. Everybody's doing the same thing together worldwide. Every mass is exactly the same. There's a mass going on at every minute across the world, and that was extremely intriguing to Scott Hahn. On the other hand, there's someone else I was looking at, Jim Wahlberg, the brother of Mark and Donnie Wahlberg. He is a product of what he considered to be traditional Catholics, meaning, by his definition of such, not faithful Catholics. Like, he did not know Jesus Christ, but he knew all the traditions of the church. And he had become an alcoholic. I think he's the middle child of 9, and he's the older brother of Donnie and Mark. And I think we know especially of Mark's Catholicism. Mark is pretty bold about it.
Yeah.
Mark Wahlberg. And I don't know much about Donnie. I can only make an assumption coming from that family. But Jim was a thief. Jim went to prison. Jim went to prison for a long time. He started drinking at age 8. But in prison, Mother Teresa visited. And she sat with the prisoners, and as Jim Wahlberg would say, with that heavy, like, Northeastern accent, the Boston accent, tough guy, obviously a prisoner, and lived on the streets. Had the Pope up there with the big hat, and trying to get her into this fancy seat up by the altar.
You're trying to get back in good graces with our Boston crowd, aren't you? You want to bring them back into the show?
I love Boston. I love Boston. I love Fenway Park. I do. But I do. And Maura has become a Boston fan, which I'll never forgive myself for bringing her to Fenway. But
I can see some interventions needed in that family.
She, he said, was in a 100-year-old sweater and 200-year-old, sandals. She knelt with the prisoners the whole time that she was there. She was able to get up to give a talk. And she said to the prisoners, he got the message from her that I am far more than a prisoner. She said, Christ makes us all far more than we will ever know. And he converted, already Catholic, but not a Catholic, if you know what I mean. Mm-hmm. That's when he converted to Catholicism. He made his confirmation in prison 2 months later. Mm-hmm. That's cool. That's very cool.
That is cool. Yeah. Wow.
And just real quick, going back to Bug Hall, he said that his poverty is extremely misunderstood. He wanted to disappear into God, complete anonymity. And, at that convert attitude, that fiercely flag-waving new U.S. citizen, but now a Catholic convert, jumping right into taking a profoundly, and I found this by his words, Carthusian approach. And I'm sure you know that because you have your theological degree. But and that order of Carthusians is what? They're Latin. They're an enclosed order of the Catholic Church. There are no saints that we know from Carthusians because they're so anonymous. They're buried unmarked and so forth. That's where he's going. That's where he's running. And he said, that his pain and suffering from his experiences in Hollywood were so profound that he never saw himself ever leaving that career, because that pain and suffering meant Hollywood, and Hollywood meant that, and it was so innately in him, invasively in him, he never thought that he would ever leave it. And it's the Catholic Church that took him out of that pain and the suffering. That's pretty cool. That's what I wanted to hear about my beloved church. But I didn't know, Tom, until I really looked into it, how deeply profound some of these feelings are that our celebrities have suffered and are happening as we speak. Why the heck would I ever watch TV again, Tom? Why would I ever endorse, watch TV, or ever talk about a movie again? He said this is profound. His suffering is profoundly inherent in Disney movies, children's movies, baseball movies, Sandlot movies, all those movies. He said it's rampant.
Yeah, and let me make another follow-up point since you said that so well, and in saying that, and especially as you were closing on that last point, the difference between the church, we talked about its scandals, and we have numerous times over the years. But when we look at, for example, the Dallas Charter in, I believe it was 2002, and how that worked to root out much of the problem. When you look at the data over the last, I mean, we can go back 2 years, we go back longer than 2 years to say the number of credible accusations is extremely low, extremely low. If Hollywood, if the public school system, Presbyterians, whoever, pick that group, if they had the introspection that the Catholics have had and that the Catholic Church has long had, we look inward and we go outward. We self-examine. That's the whole point of examination of conscience. We're supposed to look in and see where are we going wrong. So we do that, and we do it well. And that's by the grace of God through the sacrament of confession and reconciliation. And by doing that, we've had significant successes in rooting out the problem. Oh, if those other entities did the same thing, but they haven't, and there's a good chance they won't. So it's the personal experience so often in life that impacts us the most. Something's got to go to the heart. The head and the heart have to both be in it. Can't just be up in the head, and it can't just be in the heart. You got to have both. God gave us a brain, and He gave us a heart.
Oh, sure, body, mind, and soul. It's a complete cycle.
We got to do it. It's got to be all. We can't be ignorant. We're beings of reason. We're made in the image and likeness of God, the Word, the eternal Word. So, I think I want to talk about something. We have a few minutes left. There was John Wayne was one of the people that came up. Now, he converted 2 days, I think, before he died. 2 days, but I think it was moving toward that. I just want to say, we talk about Hollywood and you look at the difference. This came up a little bit in the interview with Bug Hall. The motion picture, this is how far we've fallen, let's put it that way. Not how far we've come, how far we've fallen in America in terms of our entertainment industry. The Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals. And it was mainly conservative, not necessarily just politically conservative, but conservative in character, let's say, and personal philosophy. And their statement of principle, it's almost impossible to believe that it could be stated today. I'm just going to read just a little bit of it. We believe in and like the American way of life, the liberty and freedom which generations before us have fought to create and preserve, the freedom to speak, to think, to live, to worship, to work, and to govern ourselves as individuals, as free men. Believing in these things, we find ourselves in sharp revolt against the rising tide of communism, fascism, and kindred beliefs that seek by subversive means to undermine and change this way of life. Groups that have forfeited their right to exist in this country of ours. In our mutual field of motion pictures, we resent the growing impression that this industry is made of and dominated by communists, radicals, and crackpots. We believe that we represent the vast majority of the people who serve this great medium of expression. Oh, this is me now saying, if that were still the case. He goes on, but unfortunately, it has been an unorganized majority, that is the conservatives, the traditional. This has been almost inevitable. The very love of freedom, of the rights of the individual, make this great majority reluctant to organize. But now we must, or we shall meanly lose, quote, the last best hope on earth, unquote. Now, I'm not going to go on anymore, but I recommend looking at the statement of principles by, you can find it on Wikipedia, Motion Picture Alliance for the Preservation of American Ideals.
Yeah.
They didn't, if they had that with Bug Hall, they ignored it. This is in the 40s.
Yeah, 1930. I know we got to shut up, but the Production Code Administration had the same code. So the code was put out there that got shut down later on in 1942 in some case, United States versus Paramount, and that crippled everything. It was all based on Catholicism. The leaders, the founders, the writers of this code, they were Catholic. One was a priest. No picture should be produced that will lower the standards and morals of those who see it. That was number one.
Exactly. It's really amazing when you look back at in our culture. So in the culture, in the arts, so much has changed from, let's say, the early 1900s, even with the silent movies, to 1960, let's say. And then from that point forward, we are where we are today.
One more, real quick. The audience should never be thrown to the side of crime, wrongdoing, evil, and sin. Every production in Hollywood was based on those codes. Until the justice who helped write U.S. versus Paramount also led us to legalize contraception and onward to abortion.
Perfect segue, Dan, to the last point, and then we got to wrap it up. Dr. Bernard Nathanson, the premier abortion doctor, was converted. He was Jewish, agnostic at best, atheistic, and a Catholic priest worked on him. They had conversation, and he changed his ways. He renounced his past, and he's thanked God and the Catholic Church for the sacrament of confession and reconciliation. The Catholic Church, it's where it's at, and we have to do our part, Danny, and I know you know this, to help people see the jewel that it is and how it enriches our lives because of how it inspires us to strive to enrich others' lives. What do we got coming up next, buddy?
But stay tuned for your prayer intentions, and Peter and Jemmy, first of all, of course, the Angelus, and then Peter and his show will follow.
Another great conversation. I say as objectively as I possibly can. At least I enjoyed it, and I'm confident many others did. And we love this platform at WQPHradio.org. Marianne, Harold, Gene, James, all the crew, the great
All
work.
Stars.
All stars, that's right. Your donations help us. Thank you.
Amen.
God bless all. God bless you, Danny.
God bless you, Tommy. God bless you all.
On behalf of everyone here at WQPH, we would like to take a moment to congratulate Thomas R. Caffrey from the 13th Apostle broadcast. He published a new book available on Amazon.com called A Boy for All Seasons, But a Man. Boys Need a Hero's Journey to Reach Virtuous Manhood. You can get that on Kindle or at Amazon.com.
Thank you for listening to the 13th Apostle with Dan Duddy and Tom Caffrey. For more information on Dan, visit his website at www.danduddy.com or email dcduddy@gmail.com. Tom's website is faithpilgrims.com or email trcaffrey@faithpilgrims.com. How about you? Will you be the 13th Apostle?